I'm Art Markman. I'm a professor of psychology. I'm the founding director of the Human Dimensions of Organizations program and executive director of the IC² Institute at the University of Texas at Austin. And I'm the author of a new book called Bring Your Brain to Work, published by Harvard Business Review Press. Bring Your Brain to Work is using cognitive science to really help people to understand the phases of their career. So the aim of the book is to introduce people to their brain and really three facets of their brain: the cognitive brain, the motivational brain, and the social brain. And then to use that to understand the three facets of a career: getting a job, both the first job but also every other job that you get throughout that career; succeeding at that job once you have it, meaning doing well at communicating, at leading, and at learning, as well as moving on in your job, or perhaps even moving away from that career and deciding to take on a whole different career path. This book is based on a lot of the work that I've done in the field of cognitive science over the last 30 years. Partly my own research, so for example, some of the work that I talk about in How to Be Productive comes out of work that I've done in my lab on motivation. But some of it comes from my knowledge of the field, stemming from things like spending 9 years as editor of the journal Cognitive Science, which is the flagship journal of the Cognitive Science Society, in which I got to read hundreds of papers a year that were coming out in the field. In addition to that, not only did I want to review the research and give people an opportunity to use that research to understand themselves, but I wanted to illustrate it with real cases. So the other bit of research I did for this was to go out to my social media connections and just say to people, tell me about your careers. And I asked pointed questions throughout the process, and fantastically, people were willing to share all sorts of stories that were wonderful illustrations of the points that the science really makes. One of the things I had the most fun with in this book is something I called the jazz brain. And there are two interesting things about this from my standpoint. The first is, when I was in my mid-30s, I took up the saxophone, never thinking that it would have any influence on my professional life in any way. I just thought it would be fun to do. But what I realized after years of learning to play the saxophone and learning to play some jazz was that actually there are lots of lessons from music that apply directly to the way that we navigate a career. And I'll give you one just as an example, which is the lesson that they teach when you're about to sit in with a new group of musicians. They tell you you should listen more than you play. And it turns out that's profound, because whenever you engage with a new group of people in the workplace, particularly in a leadership role, you begin to think, I have to be impressive right away. Just like a jazz musician might say, I've got to show everybody right away that I have the technical chops to be here. The problem is you blow a great line on the saxophone without listening, and chances are whatever you played isn't going to fit with what everybody else is playing, which is why you have to listen. And the same thing is true in leadership roles. You have to listen to what's going on in the organization so that the things that you say and the things that you try to implement mesh with what other people are trying to accomplish. And so for me, the jazz brain was this perfect way of beginning to think about all of the unscripted elements that drive success in the workplace. One of the key findings in this book involves the motivational brain. So in order to be motivated to do something, you need to actually have some amount of dissatisfaction in your life. People often think, I want to be really satisfied, but actually, if you're going to move on in your career, you actually need to be dissatisfied with where you are right now, because there has to be a gap between where you are right now and where you want to be. But that gap alone only creates frustration. So one of the things that you want to do is actually to have what we could call a bridgeable gap. Meaning, I recognize that dissatisfaction, but I have a plan that's going to get me from where I am right now to where I want to be in the future. Which means that each of us needs to take on mentors who will help us to bridge that gap. Not just one mentor, but often a team that helps us to figure out, how do I navigate this career transition? What are the skills that I need to learn? Who are the people that I need to know? And by bringing these elements together, I can actually move from one job to the next smoothly. People often wonder, how do you find a good mentor? And actually, it's not just a mentor, it really is a team. So the first thing you want to do is to find somebody who's a real superstar. And that superstar, you might think, how could I approach that person? But actually, just reaching out to them, being willing to take them out for coffee is often enough. Because when you find a real superstar and you want to sit down with them, you're asking them to talk about their favorite topic, themselves and their success. And so often they're actually willing to share a piece of that story just by asking. In fact, in general, there's a lot of research, some of which was done by Vanessa Bones, suggesting that people are often much more willing to help than you think they will be. And so just asking people for help is actually a critical part, which means that all of the people that you think might be able to help you are probably just an email or a phone call away from you. There are many books out there on career management, so why is this one different? I think that there are a few fundamental differences. One is that I've really tried to root this book in the science of the way the mind works. Interestingly though, I try to focus on the science where we're pretty sure that this science holds up. One of the things that many people have recognized is that there's something called the replication crisis going on in cognitive science, where some number of phenomena that we thought were solid actually may not be as solid as we thought. And so a lot of what I've tried to do is to find research where we're quite sure this is a real phenomenon, this is something we need to pay attention to, and then to draw the implications of that out for careers themselves. Because a lot of other research either uses surveys as data where you've asked people a lot of questions, but you don't necessarily know why people feel the way that they do. Because frankly, if it were easy enough to just ask people why they do what they do, we would be done already with the field of cognitive science. It is the sophisticated observation we need to do that really drives a lot of the scientific research, and I'm trying to bring that home. The other thing is I'm trying to do this in a comprehensive way. So I actually talk about 3+1 brain in the book. There's the motivational brain, the social brain, and the cognitive brain. So your motivational system, your ability to interact with other people, and your ability to think, as well as a bonus brain, the jazz brain, which has to do with our ability to improvise. And by trying to take a comprehensive approach like this, I think I'm going beyond what a lot of other people who write books in this space have tried to do. When I wrote this book, I had several audiences in mind, and obviously people who are in the process of trying to navigate their careers is part of that audience. But another group that I thought was really important were people who spend their careers trying to influence the careers of other people. People in human capital, people in organizational development. And often we don't take the perspective of the people whose careers we're trying to influence. We don't keep that in mind when we're doing the work that we're doing. And so what I wanted to do in this book was to give those people who are trying to affect the careers of others a real understanding of the mindsets and the ways that the cognitive, social, and motivational systems are functioning in people so that they can use those principles to give good guidance to other people as they help them to navigate their careers.